Okay, sorry, that's my computer. It says recording.
How many candidates were invited?
There are many candidates in this race, and we've invited every single one of them. And Mike's saying 9 candidates. We had like 7 of them RSVP. Oh, there's
now we can start.
Ranti.
Ranti's here. Now we can start.
The pop-up artist, man.
Well, we can start, and as people come on, we can, right, Sky?
No, this is great. So what happens sometimes is people register as an attendee instead of as a participant. So then I'll just include them in, you know.
Okay.
Here's Amoy.
What's up, Ranti? How are you?
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
I'm good. Good.
Ranti, you look thinner than the last time I saw you.
No, that's knocking on these doors.
We're all sweating off the weight. The heat was.
Yeah, knocking on these doors will do it to you. How are you doing?
All that exercise. No,
Yeah.
we're doing good. And Steve Witt is our editor-in-chief of PoliticsNY. And together, Steve and I have been moderating almost every single council district that has a debate. So we've been going in numerical order. So 49 means we've gotten through almost 49 debates together.
Incredible, incredible.
And
3
right
a
after
day.
this is
3 a
5
day,
o'clock.
you know?
This is 5 to 6, and then 6:30 to 7:30 tonight is the Staten Island Borough President debate.
Yeah.
And Steve's going to be handling that one solo.
Good luck, Matt.
I'm a little nervous, but.
That's a rowdy crowd if there ever was one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, just
Maybe I should just let him go at it.
kidding. This is the rowdy crowd. The 9 of
All
us
right.
are a little fun.
Yeah, so I hope more candidates join because Schneps Media, PoliticsNY, we are the only media outlet that's providing a platform for every single candidate to have their faces seen, voices heard, and personalities on display. Because as we all know, that's the thing that we're missing this year are the chit chats and the personal stuff like we're having right now, like off the cuff conversation. So that's what we hope to inspire here in these forums. And we've invited all the candidates. So we hope that they join us. And if any of them are stuck as attendees, just, you know, raise your hands and I'll loop you in as a panelist. But let's just get started because we only have till 6 o'clock. Welcome to PoliticsNY with Sky. This is my co-host, editor-in-chief of PoliticsNY, Steve with a tie.
Hi.
So we are the only media outlet providing this platform, hyper local. You see most of the media is paying attention to the mayoral race and the controller race, but what about the city council races? So that's what we're doing and we're having a lot of fun with it. So right now, this is the showdown for District 49 on Staten Island, the North Shore of Staten Island. It's Debbie Rose's district. It is an open seat now. So there are a lot of people running for it, even though you only see a few on the screen right now. So today's debate, especially because there's only a few of you that are with us right now, can be more like a discussion. Why not? We'll have fun with it. We'll keep it fast and fun so that voters stay engaged and we'll keep the smiles flowing. So it's being recorded also, so you'll be able to watch this debate as many times as you want on our website, politicsny.com/debates. There's a whole page there of all the debates that we've hosted. And welcome to our candidates. And like I said, we've invited all the candidates for District 49, but you see who's here right now. I see 3 candidates. So let's just go around and have the 3 of you introduce yourselves, take 90 seconds, tell us a little bit about yourself and what would make you the best council member for District 49. And let's begin with Kelvin Richards.
Yeah, I got to go first, man. Hey, hi. My name is Kelvin Richards. I am a public defender here on Staten Island. I'm a fighter. I think it's time that the North Shore have someone who actually fights for folks here on the North Shore. I've been fighting for the voiceless in criminal court as a public defender now for almost a decade. Growing up, my mom is from Ghana. My dad is from Liberia. I saw myself as 9 years old living in the refugee camps in Ghana. I suffered the horrors of the Civil War living on a refugee camp, but I was fortunate enough to survive the war. I came to Staten Island after high school. I live on Park Hill in public housing, worked overnight, went to the College of Staten Island, where I worked overnight and put myself through college. Graduated with honors, had a scholarship, went to law school in Minnesota, and decided to come back here on the North Shore to do the work in my community as a public defender. I've been doing that now for almost a decade. I live in New Brighton with my wife. She's a medical doctor. When I went to law school in 2008, I didn't have a mentor or someone to look up to say, hey, to show me the ropes. So I promised myself that I was going to mentor young people that want to go to law school. My wife told me, well, if you're going to do it, I'm going to do it too. So she's mentoring young folks who wants to go to medical school, and I'm mentoring young folks that want to go to law school. We've been doing the work in the community, and I'm here to answer your questions. I want to fight for good paying jobs, safer streets, see how the North Shore could recover from this pandemic, and help with our schools and so forth. So that's a brief overview of my background, and I'm here to answer your questions and so forth. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy you guys are hosting this, and I'm willing to listen to my colleagues. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelvin Richards. And next, let's hear from the only prince in this race, Ranti Ogunleye.
Thank you so much, Sky. You remembered. I really appreciate this, and welcome to all the candidates as well. My name is Ranti, and about 50 years ago, my parents migrated from West Africa, Nigeria, and they raised me and my 3 siblings in the Park Hill section of Staten Island. Park Hill is known because of the famous Wu-Tang Clan, but it's also known because it's a diverse community, and a community that never receives the resources needed for community members to be their best selves. So you have a diverse community, but you see a lot of drugs and a lot of violence. I was lucky because I was transformed by an after-school program called Global Kids, when I had the opportunity to travel to Vienna, Austria, like I told you before, Sky, and learn about sustainability when I didn't even know how to spell the word. And I actually also traveled to Croatia to work with Bosnian refugees in 96, 97, and 98 after the Dayton Peace Accords were signed. And it was there that I looked at my life as a global citizen, using the lens of human rights to look at world issues and take action. So I came back to my district, and I've been working ever since for 20 years, mitigating issues on the ground that our city and state government has tried to actually address. So I came back, worked as the director of the New York Urban League for 6 years. I'm also an adjunct professor at the College of Staten Island. I also became a community school director in the Bronx. My current role is the director of the Jewish Community Center that's based in Staten Island, and a community called Staten, which is actually no different from the community I grew up in. It's diverse, it's beautiful, but again, community members lack resources to be their best selves. And I don't think city government should be an impediment for progress. It should actually be the thing that actually helps you to get there. And I haven't seen it work. So I actually myself have been filling the gaps with other community members that our government should. That's why I'm best positioned, because I've actually been doing the work for 20 years. I've actually been addressing these issues. And I'm the candidate that can actually finally bring community members to the table that normally don't get access and have their voices valued. So that's why I'm running for city council. And I also have never turned my back on this community for over 20 years. I've worked in this district tirelessly to make sure that our community members are valued. So that's why I'm the best candidate here.
Awesome. And now let's hear from Mike Schnall with his, what is it, Back to the Future inspired campaign.
Remember that too. Wait, first off, why did you say that Ranti was a prince? What's that?
Ranti, you didn't explain how you're.
You didn't, Mike, I never explained this to you, but my grandfather was a king in Nigeria. You can look it up. They actually did a whole, and New York Times did a coverage on me and my brother. You know, my brother played in the NFL, and they followed us back to our lineage. My grandfather sat on the throne for 24 years before he died, and it was passed to my uncle. So yes, I am a prince, not only Prince Charles over there in London, you got the prince right here in Staten Island. I just don't talk about it too much.
I just saw the second Coming to America.
Wow. I don't have any.
Yeah, actually, Mike, I that's why when I did that thing called the Prince of Staten Island, that's what that was really about. But people didn't understand it. But I'm really a prince.
I thought you were just a Will Smith fan. Oh, right. Okay. This makes total sense. I gotta tell my wife, the two of us are like, why is he, what's the French Prince connection?
These are the fun things that come up by 3 questions in 3 minutes that you wouldn't normally learn about the candidates. Yep. There you go. Just like your campaign posters, Mike.
Yeah. All right. So, wow, that's and I learn something new every day. I mean, that's great. All right. Well, so why am I running? I am a lifelong New Yorker. I moved to Staten Island when I was 2, so I don't claim the native title, but grew up on the South Shore, a product of the public school system. My parents were school teachers, and now I'm raising my kids in the public school system, and my wife is a public school teacher. So big believer in public education. And where I've always ended up in life, I credit to the incredible education I had and the incredible teachers that I had. So what makes me different than my two colleagues that are sitting here, and why am I most effective? Well, all of us bring a lot of things to the table. I think what I bring to the table is sort of a complete 360-degree understanding of the city's budget. I started out my career after law school in government in the City Council Finance Division. And then I worked as a legislative director for a then council member, now a Congress member. And then, so that was 4 years in the city council, and then spent almost 10 in New York City parks. The first half of that as citywide director of government relations. And then the last 4.5 years, I was appointed chief of staff in Staten Island. And then the last 5 years, I worked as the vice president of government relations and community investment at New York Roadrunners. And I'm now a full-time candidate. And so all of those experience, whether it was in the city council finance division, distilling the budget and passing the budget, with a council member, which was on the side of receiving requests from nonprofits and allocating money in the budget on her behalf. Then at parks, lobbying for millions and millions and millions of dollars to build parks and playgrounds and open space and acquire new property citywide, and then specifically for Staten Island. And then at New York Roadrunners, leading the lobbying effort to secure expense funding for seniors and youth and all sorts of programming, and then investing millions into the refurbishment of schoolyards into playgrounds that were designed by school kids and open to the community. I sort of know the entire breadth and width of the city's budget. And over the next 4 to 8 years, we're going to have some bitter budget battles. And everyone complains about how Staten Island doesn't get its fair share. And there's a lot of reasons why that happens, but primarily it is that a lot of times we just don't know where the money is buried. And so when I approach a budget, I look at it from many different angles. I look at it from the elected official side. I look at it from the agency side. I look at it from the community stakeholder side. And I think all three of those perspectives would make me most effective in securing the funding. Now we can go into issues and such, but I think for me, that is where I land. And hopefully the next mayor will be as diligent and as insightful into our city budget and understand how the implications of the city budget impact people's lives. Millions of people's lives hang in the balance every year when the city council and the mayor agree on a budget. And so I hope to be part of that starting January 1st. And thank you for this opportunity to chat with you and my colleagues again.
Right, awesome, thank you. And now Amoy Barnes has joined us, another candidate for New York City Council District 49. So Amoy, we're just taking 90 seconds each to tell us a little bit about yourself and what would make you the best council member for District 49 on the North Shore of Staten Island.
Thank you so much, Sky, and thank you so much. I appreciate it. Today, my internet wants to have trouble. It's the story of our lives. And it's like, I gotta restart my computer right now. We've all been there. My name is Amoy Barnes, and I am also a candidate for New York City Council. Hello, everyone. Hello, my fellow candidates. What makes me a unique candidate for City Council? So just a little bit about myself. I'm a Staten Islander, but my family and I, we immigrated to Staten Island from Jamaica, the island, not Queens. People do get confused sometimes, when I was 4 years old. And my family and I, we just worked our way up. You know, we had literally and figuratively came here with the American dream. My grandmother worked as a maid cleaning people's houses, even though she had a master's degree from Jamaica. She had to come here and start all over again. That's the thing about being an immigrant that most of the times people don't realize. When you come here from another country, you have to start all over again and build yourself up from nothing to something. That is what I saw my family do. That is what I saw, and I was able to be supported and successful because of my community. Mike talked about being a public school educated kid. I'm a public school educated kid myself as well. And literally and figuratively, I was raised by the village. My mother worked 2 jobs to support me. And it was my village that kept me out of trouble. It was my village that made sure I was educated. It was my coaches, my guidance counselors. That is the community that I grew up in. That is the Staten Island that I know. Those are the resources that I had access to when I was young. And those are the resources that I want to make sure that other people and other families and other immigrant communities and anybody who wants to reach their fullest potential has access to. Government is not supposed to be a barrier to people's success. Government is supposed to be a stepping stone to people's success. And I've had the pleasure of working in government for the past 15 years now. And I always say I cut my teeth in the bread and butter of constituent services. That is one of the main focuses of an elected official when it comes to city council. On the grassroots level, you are a constituent services person. You are a quality of life position. Working to improve people's quality of life, that is the work I've done for the past 15 years, advocating, whether it be director of constituent services for a state senator, whether it be working with Mike Schnall in the Parks Department, helping to create friends groups and keeping our communities clean and helping build new parks in our community, or whether it be as director of Staten Island Borough Director for the mayor's office, working with every single agency in this city to advocate for the needs of Staten Islanders. I have seen it all. I have touched it all. But most importantly, what I have seen and what I know about government is that a good elected official, a good local city council member is about improving people's quality of life, and that requires good constituent services. And that's what I want to make sure I bring to my community. So that's a little bit about myself, and I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, fabulous. So we have 4 out of the 9 candidates here with us on the screen, and we have a live audience. So voters that are watching, if you have any questions, you can submit them into our Q&A chat function, and maybe Steve and I will incorporate them into tonight's conversation. We have until 6 o'clock together. So let's dive into some of these issues. Oh, Steve, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. I understand there's been a lot of homeless shelters cited in the district, or at least in Stapleton. I could be wrong on that. And I'm wondering, do you think that it's an overabundance? Do you think that there's too many put in the district? How do you think they should be controlled, or is it not an issue? Maybe I was given a bad tip on that.
I mean, you are right. I think we have an issue here with the homeless shelters that's coming to on the North Shore. But I actually want to address the root of the problem. I think we have to actually address mental health issues here on the North Shore, and not just Staten Island, but I think it's New York City in general. And I think COVID has actually exacerbated our mental health concerns here. You know, as a public defender, I have a lot of clients who do suffer from mental health issues, and I see the limitations that I have to place my clients in looking for beds here on Staten Island. It's easier to get a bed in Manhattan or Brooklyn for my client who will be locked up in Rikers Island, and I have to wait for someone to be incarcerated for a month or two, having a bed for them in Manhattan than Staten Island. So we have to actually tackle mental health issues, the resources we have to actually understand our homelessness. Listen, I'm not in support of having 4 or 5 homeless shelters come to Staten Island and the North Shore, but I also understand that we can't ignore it, and we cannot lock people up. We can't just take all our mental health people and say, well, they're homeless, they have mental issues, let's keep them in jail. That's not right.
The people and there's shelters from Staten Island.
Say that again? No, some are from Staten Island, but I believe some of those folks that are from different boroughs. You have people coming from different boroughs coming here on the North Shore. So again, we need community involvement. Our community, the community board needs to be involved. We need to have our voices heard. And I think the mayor did a very poor job of just imposing these homeless shelters on us here on Staten Island without our input. And that's something I'm willing to.
And I think also what Kelvin's trying to say is, and because this is such a very, very sensitive issue, right? Because we know when we need homeless shelters. And I don't even like the term shelters because it's not the right term for it. We have to make sure we're using the right terminology. It's transitional housing, right? We need transitional housing because emergencies happen, right? I've seen it. I've seen people's homes burned down, and literally and figuratively, they have nowhere to go. So let's just be very, very clear about that. But when you're building transitional housing, we also have to think about the locations that they're putting them in. And so the North Shore all too often has shared the burden, gracefully, I might add, of housing a lot of the shelters that exist in our community, and our community has suffered from it. because of the lack of mental health beds, because of the lack of supportive housing, because of the lack of permanent housing. And so when we're looking at the shelter system or transitional housing, because I always say you wouldn't build a hospital without building an emergency room, right? So when we think about housing, you don't build housing without building transitional housing, because transitional housing is the emergency room of housing. So just remember that. But in general, what we're always trying to say is that everybody needs to share the burden across the island, and we also need to be careful of the communities that we're putting it in. And Black and Brown communities specifically have been overburdened with these transitional housing. And so we want to make sure that people are supported accordingly. Build more housing, build more permanent housing, build more supportive housing, and support us with more mental health beds.
I want to talk about the process for a second. So I agree with both my colleagues, but there is something substantial in the process that we're not talking about. The mayor's office actually followed the law, which is something that's unusual for them recently, and that requires very minimal community engagement. And they're basing their decisions on something called the borough-based decision making, which is actually counter to what the city charter requires, which is a fair share model. The de Blasio administration decided that it was better to place temporary housing, homeless shelters, whatever you call it, close to where our homeless families are living. The theory is that if they're going to school or they're going to their jobs, you want to keep them in temporary housing closest to where their lives can continue to be somewhat normal and there's some continuity. Whereas actually the fair share strategy, which is what the city council has pushed and what's actually in the charter, requires an even distribution per capita across the 5 boroughs. And it is not what the de Blasio administration is doing. And so I think that there's a third way. There's a way to accomplish both goals, which is what Amoy is mentioning, is that we want to spread the share across the borough, but we also want to house our own. We want to keep people who are living in Staten Island to give them some continuity. So I think a third way needs to be looked at. And I will give credit where credit is due. Assemblymember Fall and Senator Savino passed the bill and got it signed into law that starting next year, the mayor's office will be required to give more notification and have more community engagement. But here's the thing, even with that law, it's very likely that the de Blasio administration would have cited them there anyway, because the opportunities to place housing is very far and few between that's suitable. So we're gonna have a real struggle, whoever is in this next council seat, to figure out that third way and figure out a way that sort of keeps everyone happy. And it's one of those situations where no one walks away with a victory.
Yeah, I echo with the sentiments of all my colleagues who just said, but I think because I've worked in the grounds for over 20 years, this is actually the community that they're actually trying to do the shelter. I'm the director of the JCC in that community. And just like Amoy said, it's actually where they're placing the temporary housing. They're placing it on the corner where 4 small schools are there. Right? We have our most vulnerable population there. So that's not the best place, right? And then when you think about these transitional housing, what are the other services that are around them that can actually support these individuals so they can actually, get out of transitional housing into permanent homes? The other issue that we're dealing with, and just like you said, we have a history of punitive incarceration of Black and Brown community members. So especially when you think about the North Shore, we incarcerate community members on the North Shore twice as much as we do on the South Shore. And then we think about the mental health situation, 12 times the amount of people that are locked up with mental health issues, then they're not in mental health facilities because we lack the mental health infrastructure. That does not exist. So we need to, one, create healthcare infrastructure that can actually address the needs of our community members, right? That have been suffering prior to the pandemic. The pandemic just pretty much put a spotlight on these issues that communities of colors have been facing for years. And we know this, right? So it's about fair representation, but it's about having a fighter at the city council level who can actually speak and bring the voices of the community members who never actually get access and who never have their voices heard. I also I was really upset that we have a woman, right, who's done some work, and that the communication between the city council and the mayor wasn't there. And I think that's also a big difference of what I would do when I get in the seat. That open line of communication has to happen. There's no way, regardless of what a policy or the charter says, that this could be built without having elected officials' voice and the community voice. So that's the other thing. And then we need to make sure that we incentivize when we think about policies for open spaces, public spaces. We need to make sure that we work with developers who prioritize our community members. 50% of new developments have to be deemed affordable to community members that live here, using median metrics, not federal benchmarks that don't apply to what the real story of community members, what they're really making on the ground here, right? I just talked to a community member recently who told me like they're working 2 jobs and they can't afford an apartment on Staten Island. This is what we're dealing with. So we need to make sure that that happens, that we're working with developers who actually are really going to prioritize community members. So it's going to be an all hands on deck approach, and we're going to have to mitigate this in many different ways.
So yeah, I want to dive into housing, and I also want to dive into what you would do differently than the current council member. But first, since we were talking about mental health services, I want to go back to that. Everyone needs mental health services. I think that's been so clear, right? Even for people who didn't think they did, I think this pandemic really caused everyone to question themselves, including me. But a lot of people are saying that this mental health, the money for mental health services, right? They're saying it should come from the police budget. And that's where this notion of defund the police and, take money and put them into services like mental health services. The question here is, and we can do it a little conversational like we just did, is where does the money come from in your opinion? Or if you're elected, what would you advocate for this money coming from when it comes to mental health services? And talk about how you feel about the police in that same question.
It absolutely does. It absolutely comes from part of it, right? Not all of it, but part of it definitely comes from repurposing funding from the NYPD budget, right? So we definitely need to do that, because when we think about intervention and prevention, that's the only way we're going to actually be able to address the crisis that we see, the opioid crisis, the drug crisis, while our kids are in isolation. We don't treat gun violence like a public health crisis that it truly is, right? So we need to actually repurpose that funding and be able to address the issue before it actually becomes exacerbated like it is in our communities, right? And we do know that communities of color have been under siege by punitive policing, right? And that same energy stops officers from actually addressing the real issues that are facing all of our communities, even in the South Shore, right? So we need better policing and we need to hold them accountable. But that also talks about taking that funding and putting it into programs that are going to actually support our young people. Think about what our kids are facing when they get back to school, right? We need to make sure that we have cultural competent practitioners that can actually support our young people, and that's going to take resources, right? We need to take some of that funding from the NYPD, because that's going to be able to begin to address some of the issues that we're facing. We also need to tax the rich. We need
what
to.
I'm going to say here is, listen, our millionaires and billionaires, they need to pay their fair share in taxes in New York City. That's a no-brainer. They have to pay their fair share in taxes, and that's going to increase our revenue. When it comes to the police, we have to strike a balance between community safety and accountability. That's the issue. The issue here is we've seen an uptick in gun violence. We've seen an uptick in shootings lately in the summertime. I'm saying this because I represent a lot of shooters. As a public defender, I have a lot of clients who commit these crimes, but we have to balance safety. People need to be safe. I went to a barbecue last summer with my 2-year-old daughter. As I'm leaving the barbecue, someone got shot at a kid's barbecue, broad day. That's unacceptable. We have to actually allow the police to do their jobs. But if a police officer abused their discretion to serve our community, they need to be held accountable. And that's the problem.
Again, putting more cops on the street doesn't actually stop a kid from grabbing a gun. And this is,
I get it, but guess what? I'm not saying you should put more cops on the street. I'm saying we know the police know listen. The police used to do preemptive policing, meaning when I get a case of a possession of weapon, gun case, shooting case, when I get discovery, I used to see preemptive policing. What is preemptive policing? Police officers in our neighborhoods in certain hotspots know the key players that are moving and possessing on these weapons. But because of the whole incident that's been happening lately, the police actually went back. You know, they fell back, and now you have people who have guns in our community. They've been emboldened.
But you know what that preemptive policing has done? That preemptive policing has actually dragged a net and actually has incarcerated members like me, right?
Okay.
I understand what that preemptive policing, but it has actually incarcerated Black and brown communities and decimated them. So that's
well, I think what we're all talking about here is the same thing, because this is what tends to end up happening.
The confusion here is, I'm not saying stop and frisk, because what I've been stop and frisk. That's different from preemptive policing. I'm saying a police officer know a new gang member who has guns from out of state, who know they have gun, who have an informant that told them there's a gun in that apartment. That's different from me. When I was 21 years old in Staten, I got stopped and pulled to the ground, gun pulled in my face. Why? Because I look like a Black man living in public housing. That's stop and frisk. That is not preemptive policing. I'm saying preemptive policing leads to less guns in our streets and less shooting. We have to balance safety with accountability. And that's what we need to do to actually tackle the increase in shooting.
Yeah, let's hear from Amoy and then Mike.
Yes. So, I don't share this story too much, and I'll share it very, very briefly. About 2 years ago, my partner and I were driving across the Verrazano Bridge. We were flagged down by a woman who asked for help. When we went to the railing, a man was getting ready to jump and commit suicide. Unfortunately, we were unable to stop him. He committed suicide right in front of us. The police came, took my information, and told us to leave. There was no follow-up. There was no mental health check-in. I had just seen a man kill himself, and there was no resources for me. I just want to make that very clear. I'm lucky because I was able to access mental health resources after that incident took place, after that trauma took place. But so many people aren't able to access mental health resources when they experience a trauma. So I'm a big believer, and I fully 100% support reallocation of funding and taking funding from the police department to be able to support resource allocation to areas and fields that we know, because this is not rocket science. I want to be very clear. It is statistically proven. We know that when you put resources into high-need communities, into high-need issues such as mental health services, education, workforce development, open public spaces, healthcare, it improves people's qualities of life. It improves people's access to opportunities. I don't want to get into this too long, because I really, really feel like it's very almost a bit commonsensical. The police budget is extremely, extremely inflated. And the fact of the matter is that a lot of the work that the police are doing, they shouldn't be doing it. And so we have to decrease people's interaction with the police and make sure that they're interacting with the right resources and services that they need. We can't, this is the term, we can't police our way out of mental health. We can't police our way out of homelessness. We have to support people with the resources and services that they need. Because at the end of the day, the fact of the matter that it is, I was shocked that nobody ever called me to ask me after I saw a man commit suicide, how are you feeling?
Right.
That is unacceptable. So these are the things that we need to make sure we're doing. Resource allocation, take it from the police budget. The role of your elected officials, the role of your city council member is to do the work of looking at every single agency and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work. That's what you're supposed to do. It's a part of your job. To make sure that you're looking at where the money should be coming from, where the money should be going, and allocating that funding accordingly to support the needs of your constituents across the board.
Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm always right. When I worked at the city council finance division, that was one of my jobs, was to do an analysis of all the city agencies and find out where there were inefficiencies, where money was being spent correctly and not. But here's the reality of that council member office. The council member's office is given a pot of expense funding every year, and they allocate it to nonprofits that do a variety of things. And there are nonprofits on Staten Island that none of us actually know about that are doing mental health work, that are doing drug addiction work, that are doing some incredible work, and no one here knows about it. And if we don't know about it, I will bet you that there are a lot of Staten Islanders that don't know about it. One example is Venture House, which is in the 49th district, which I just was randomly invited to go visit, and I went and visited them, and they are doing incredible work on both drug addiction and mental health, and they provide a supportive environment for folks who are dealing with both things. And no one knows about them. And you know what? They don't get any funding from the current council member because I doubt that she knows about them. And so that's the thing, is that there's a lot of things out there that city council member's office can be supporting that is not being supported right now. So it's incumbent upon all of us to figure that out, support them, and then spread the information so that more people have access to it. And yeah, so NYPD, everyone talks about the defund the police. It's a very convenient hashtag. My thing is reprioritize them. You know, I have a neighbor who's a detective for many years who's being asked to do things that are way beyond his training and his education. And they need to be partnered with social workers and mental health professionals. And so there's no doubt that the first person that knocks on someone's door that's having mental health issues shouldn't be someone with a badge and a gun, but they should be supporting an individual who knocks on that door just in case things get a little hairy. The other thing I'll say is that I will commit to funding a mental health or social worker in every high school, which most of the high schools have now on the North Shore, and the middle schools, our intermediate schools. I think we can do a huge amount of work on that population to stave off issues when they become adults. They're going to be more willing and welcome to get that mental health assistance when they're younger than when they get to be my age, when I think I know everything and I say, I don't need help. But when you're a teenager and you're moldable and you're in a situation where you're directed to go to a social worker and you're there to work with them, and they're for the next 4 years in your high school career, you're going to get a lot more out of it, and it's going to hopefully stave off some future mental health issues. So I think that a lot of what we're saying here is that there are resources available already, and we just need to grow those resources, find those best practices, get people the help they need. I think we all have that intention. And you know, we might have a few different disagreements on the methodology, but at the end of the day, we want to get people the help they need and get it now.
Yep. Now, what, Steve, you have an interesting question?
Yes, I have a question. I always like to know how well you all really know your district. So let's say tomorrow you have to get a key made, and then you have to get some fruits and vegetables, and then you want to get some oxtail because you got some family coming over, or steak or chicken. And then you figure, well, while I'm out, I'm going to grab lunch. You got to get a key made. So you got to get, right. And then you want to get some fruits and vegetables, and you need to stop for meat. And then while you're out, you're going to have some lunch. Where would you go?
Can I go
Okay,
first?
can I start?
Go first. I want to see. I want to see.
Go first.
So,
Go
Chief,
first.
All right, I'm going to go first. Kelvin,
let's
hold
go,
on
Chief.
for a second.
All right, go first.
I went last. Okay, so to get the key to the pop-a-lock on Forest Avenue, most reliable locksmith I've used, although I have had to in an emergency go to Home Depot, which I don't really love. They don't always work. I don't like oxtail. I will tell you, I've tasted it. I worked I worked in central Brooklyn. It is not something that I would voluntarily go buy. But what was the other choice if I had to get steak?
Fruits and vegetables.
Oh, fruits and vegetables. Girardi's on Richmond Terrace, no question about it. No question. If I had to get hamburgers and steak, it's a toss-up. I mean, I actually think, well, I'd leave the district. I go to Trader Joe's. They actually have the best prices. Stop and Shop's pretty good. I go to Pastosa for some sort of meats. And then the last one was to get lunch. Well, I used to go to John's Deli. Was it John? No, not John's Deli. The one next to Tappan Park that closed. Everybody remember the name of it?
Tapas? Is it Tapas?
No, it was out of Brooklyn. Anyway, they closed. But so I'll go there, or, I always try to find these sort of like off the beaten path, like Southwestern or Mexican style restaurants that are in delis or behind a jewelry store. So I have a number of those that I go to on the North Shore. I try to try different things, and then I bring home recommendations to my house. So yeah, there's a lot of other things. But that's a really cool question. Thanks.
Well, I will go now. So I live a 2-minute walk. I live on Harvard.
By the way, DeFonte's was the name. My wife just texted me. DeFonte's.
Oh, okay. I live on Harvard and Nassau. It's literally like a 3 minutes walk to Girardi's to get fruits and vegetables. That's a farmer's market there, and they're pretty good. When I want cheap groceries, I go to Western Beef on Bay Street. It's always convenient. It's between Key Foods or Western Beef, but I'm gonna go to Western Beef. The line is long. They're very annoying. They have like 3 cashiers in the whole store. Because it's a little cheaper. And Mike, I have to disagree, but you have to try oxtail, man. My wife makes the best oxtail gravy, man.
I will try your wife's oxtail.
Okay, so when she makes it, I'm gonna hit you up, and all right.
Campaign promise, my first one, Kelvin. I will try.
Okay, yeah. So oxtail, I go to they have oxtails in Western Beef, or I go to Tarjee on Park Hill, Stop and Shop. That's where they have a lot of groceries. I get my groceries from Tarjee on Stop and Shop on Tarjee, or Western Beef on Bay Street, and fruits and vegetables on Girardi's. So that's where I normally roam around because I live in New Brighton. Yeah.
Where would you get a key made?
Maybe Highland Boulevard.
I don't know. I'm.
Oh, you don't know Highland Boulevard?
No, I'm just.
I forgot the store,
or a mop, like in my neighborhood,
miles an hour on Highland Boulevard,
Brooklyn. I have like this thing. They do everything. Keys. If I need a mop, if I need cleaning, if I need a fan, they got everything. But that's so. Where would you get a key made? You don't.
What's the name of the store? Like it's either Highland Boulevard, but I'm drawing a blank on the store, or behind the storage on Tompkins. I don't know if Ranti, do you know the name of the store? There's
yeah, I know what you're talking about. I forgot the name.
There's an everything store on Tompkins behind the storage.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I don't know the name. I don't read the name, but I know the name.
But it's by the old Wall Bounce. I know exactly.
Okay, there you go. Across the street from Wall Bounce. That store.
Yep. It's not Wall Bounce anymore, but it's the old Wall Bounce.
Yes.
And what I would do to get the key made, because I live on like Grant Street, which is right by Pier 65. I would go to Denbar's, I think it's hardware store. It's right on Victory Boulevard. It's actually across the street from the old ADG and the old Wu-Tang Woo-Wear store that used to be there. Everybody used to come to Staten Island from all over to the Woo-Wear store, which is right there, 61 Victory Boulevard. So that's where I would go to get my key made. If I want some oxtail, I go to SI Fish. They definitely got some good oxtail. Mike, you just probably had a bad experience, man. I got some people for you that could cook some good oxtail. Amoy will know some too. I know Amoy will know some. That's our Jamaican sister, so she'll definitely know. That what's the other question you asked? I go fruits and vegetables. So let me keep it real with you. My uncle has a garden, so I do get some from there. But I also, like Kelvin, I go to Key Food. Which is on Bay Street in Victory. I also go to Stop and Shop. That's right by Pathmark, which is the old Pathmark, is in a plaza on Forest Avenue. And actually in that plaza, they have not the Church's Chicken. They have that other
Popeyes?
Yeah, Popeyes. And it's like this plaza, and all in that area, that's like a shopping plaza area. So I would go over there.
Okay. Amoy, if I say it right.
All right. You want me to bust out my Jamaican accent right now? Because, if you want good oxtail, just go to my grandmother's house. All right?
Where?
Go to my grandmother's house, okay? I call her up, be like, yeah.
But where would you buy it?
Did you cook today?
Where would you buy it, though?
Buy some oxtail so I can make
All right, but for real, I like to go to Blaze. Blaze on Victory Boulevard.
Okay.
That's the spot, because I'm gonna be honest, I'm very picky about oxtail, because I like my oxtail nice and soft. I like it to be nice and soft, come off the bone, and sometimes people make their oxtail too hard, Right. So I go to Blaze. Ranti, you know what I'm talking about. So, Then in terms of keys, I go to this small mom and pop shop on Forest Avenue. I have to look at Minkle and Safe. I want to like this is the thing. When you grow up in a neighborhood community, you just know where to go. You never really pay attention to the name.
Exactly.
You never really pay attention to. You're just like, oh, I need a key, and you just go there because you just know where it is, right? So just to So, but the place is called, it's a small mom and pop shop, locally owned small business owner. He's been there for forever, Minkle and Safe. And that's where I get my keys made if I need a key. In terms of groceries, it depends on if I need something right away. If I need something right away, I go to the local bodega. Go right down the block, a block away, go around the corner, get because like this weekend, we made some ackee and sawfish with some plantain. So, we went around the corner.
Happy belated birthday.
Happy belated birthday.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We picked up some plantain and, the banana, the green banana, for the boiled green banana. And we just picked it up from the corner store, you don't need to get anything fancy. But if we want some fruit and stuff like that, if, I want to go food shopping, I go to the Stop and Shop. That's where I go. I go to Stop and Shop, which is not too far away. If I have time, which I have not had time to do any of those things, but if I do have time, I do try to also stop by the Trader Joe's. I think one of the things that I want to bring to light about Staten Island is we are a food insecure borough. So just on average, we actually don't have enough supermarkets for our residents. On average, in a community, in a neighborhood, in any neighborhood, you have a grocery store for every 9,000 people in that neighborhood, in that community. Here on Staten Island, we have a grocery store for every 17,000 people. So in general, it's actually very hard to find a grocery store. Most of the time, you have to drive to that grocery store. It's not in walking distance. So it's actually very hard to get access to fresh food here on Staten Island. So when you talk about fresh fruit and things of that nature, every single one of us really, we think about these multiple options because we think about, well, what's the closest place to go to? How do we get to? So I think that's one of the things for the work of the next city council member is to think about how do we take care of our food insecure district to make sure that our communities have access to these fresh fruits.
Right.
Thank you for that. I know
where we get our ice cream from, Steve.
What's that?
Ice cream.
Oh, is there ice cream in the district?
Anyone who doesn't say Ralph's Ices gets disqualified from running for office.
I don't eat ice cream, so that's a problem. I'm
not gonna lie.
I'm not just intolerant, so I don't eat ice cream. So I'm sorry.
Really?
When the ice cream truck comes, I'm running for it.
Huh? For my
kids.
When
the ice cream truck comes, I'm running for it. I'm like,
yep, for the kids, but I don't eat ice cream.
So I didn't know that Ralph's Ices originated on Staten Island. I grew up on Long Island and I thought Ralph's was from Long Island because there's so many Ralphs. And I didn't know until Brandon Patterson's campaign, he did something related to Ralph's Ices. And that's when I learned that Ralph's was from Staten Island.
Yes, the fifth borough no longer.
Well, I'm glad to have broken it up, but I'd like to know that, you guys know your district, Of
course.
Do all you, and just real quick, do you rent or own? Without your one word answer.
I own a house. My wife. I don't own. My wife owns the house. So.
Okay. And
I'm an only child, so my mother has nobody else to give this house to but me. I don't have to fight anybody.
You rent?
That's why I tell her all the time. I don't have to fight anybody. So.
Do you rent or own?
So we own.
And Ranti, did I say it right?
Bought the house for my parents. We moved them out, and we bought the house for my parents. This is the house we moved from when we were living in Park Hill all those years ago, and this house definitely made some great memories. So we wanted to keep it in the house in the family.
You all own?
Yes. All the kids.
Is property taxes an issue?
Well, this district is actually 50-50 owner renter, so property taxes are an issue.
Yeah.
And my fear is when they redo the crazy math is that they figure out taxes, that Staten Island actually will get hit harder because the city still needs to collect the tax base to keep its infrastructure and pay its debt service. I'm concerned about that. I think everyone's concerned about it, and I know that my taxes have gone up exponentially over the years, and it's starting to get closer to what you would pay in New Jersey, which,
Yeah.
that was one of the reasons why. I mean, it's one of the reasons why we stayed, but it was a lot of reasons why people stay too, because you pay more for the house, but you pay significantly less in taxes. And now as the taxes creep up, it becomes less attractive to stay here. So we're going to have a real trouble retaining folks if taxes.
That's what I've seen
For me,
personally in
my
my
house is newer. My house was built in 2014. And apart from property taxes, I have to pay inspection taxes for my water backflow. I didn't know this. When we bought the house in 2014, you have to do an annual inspection for your water backflow. And if you don't have the inspection, they fine you $500. So I got to pay property taxes and pay my annual water backflow inspection for new houses. There's a new administrative code from the city council that if you have a house that is built newer, you have to pay this. And people who have older houses, they don't have to pay that. So it's something that is really struggling for me.
And not only that, you see, we're paying some of the highest taxes in the city, but our services still lack. So, Staten Islanders are troopers, and we fight, but we demand more now. We demand it.
And personally, what I've seen is my generation unable to live in the community that they grew up in.
Yep.
Like, honestly, if it wasn't for my mother and the fact that I am an only child, it's very expensive to live here. I have so many friends who have had to leave Staten Island because they can't afford to buy a house. And they look at and they compare and contrast the property taxes, and they say, well, I could buy a house in Staten Island, or I could buy a house in Jersey and get more bang for my buck in terms of property, land, and things of that nature. So what we're dealing with here on Staten Island is like what I like to call like a community drain, right? Because literally, those individuals who grew up here, who would be contributing and giving back and committed to their community, they can't afford to live here anymore. So what does that say? What does that say about the next generation? This is the work that has to be done. How do we look at supporting and maintaining housing affordability on all different levels for the next generation? How do we keep people in their homes, right? Because of property taxes, we want to make sure we keep people in their homes, seniors, veterans, folks that might be dealing with foreclosure issues. How do we help people buy homes here on Staten Island, housing affordability? This is the work that needs to be done.
Yeah, people are doing astronomical things to try to make a living. It's really difficult when you're paying pretty much a mortgage for rent. That's what community members are doing. They're living 4 people in 2 bedrooms. They're trying to make it work. It's just.
And just to add to what Ranti is saying, when the housing moratorium ends, this is where we're going to see the real problem after COVID. And again, I work with legal aid, and we're teaming up to actually protect tenants so we don't have a higher rate of eviction. That's something we actually are looking into. And I think every tenant needs to have the right to counsel in public house. In housing court. Nobody should go to housing court. The landlord has a lawyer, but then they're there pro se. That's a problem. I believe everybody who walks into housing court, if a landlord has a lawyer, you should have a lawyer also. If you cannot afford a lawyer, the housing court judge should afford a legal aid attorney to you to help you.
But then we need to make sure legal aid is properly funded, right?
Of course, I need more money.
Don't we all?
I do want to bring up an issue with housing. Actually, it's pretty current. Zombie homes. Everybody know what a zombie home is? It's a home that has been abandoned and the bank is in receivership. It's actually an issue that my neighbors are dealing with on my block. There's a significant amount of homes on Staten Island that are in that state, and they're just not being turned over and resold. And it's sort of a missed opportunity. 1, it allows for more home ownership. 2, it allows for folks to flip those properties and maybe make some money. And 3, it puts money back into the tax base of the city. And it actually is sort of a lost win for the city. So one of the ideas I had was to allow Habitat for Humanity and other nonprofits to go in and turn these houses over and create a little bit more of an affordable house that folks can buy into, or the city has a pilot program where they put an office in Staten Island to manage all the disparate agencies, city, state, and federal, that deal with this issue to get these houses back on the tax rolls quicker. It is unrelated to all of us because we all own, or we all will own, but it does stop some communities from rising up because you have these sort of like eyesores and dangers in the heart of communities.
Within the district there are?
What was that?
What, Steve?
There are these ghost houses in the district?
Yeah, no, there's zombie homes all across the city. In Staten Island alone, I think there's got to be at least 200, 250 of them. Most of them are, I think, on the North Shore. I have a map that one of the Staten Island Advance reporters does the work on this periodically, and it's significant. I mean, let's say there's 150 homes on the North Shore alone. I mean, that's 150 homes time X amount of dollars a year that the city is not recovering in taxes, in all the transfer taxes, all the taxes that come from sales. And it's also 150 families that don't have homes. So it's a significant burden on the community.
So we have 4 minutes left. We didn't get to talk about transportation, which is a question that came in from our live audience. How will the candidates address transportation on the North Shore? The question also asked about expanding ferry services. And we didn't get to talk about what you would do differently than Debbie Rose as a council member. So maybe we'll conclude and maybe keep those questions in mind as you talk about your concluding thoughts. And I always like to ask what's your superpower, because that's something I think voters remember. So if we want to go around and conclude, and Steve's looking very dark, so I'm going to go give him this light since he's in the other room. So begin the conclusions and let there be light.
Superpower. Well, I'll go first.
Yeah, go first, man.
Wow. Okay. Transportation. One of my 49 ideas for the 49th is to add a 9:15 and a 9:45 ferry boat. Anyone who's missed the 9 o'clock boat or the 9:30 boat knows how much of a pain that is to sit there for 29 minutes nursing your coffee, waiting to get to work. So that's one. Two, all of these ferry boats are going to be on electric drive at some point soon. So I would hope that they would speed up the ferry boats, make a 25-minute trip, maybe 20 minutes, get back another 5 minutes. That 5 minutes actually will make a huge difference in terms of getting a connecting subway on the way in or getting a connecting bus on the way back home. The other issue, superpower. Oh, geez. I don't know. I can eat chocolate in a single bound. I don't know. I tell dad jokes. Sky knows this, but I'm not going to share them because I've been threatened by my family. So I will just tell you that I can tell really bad jokes, and I'm happy to, take those after the fact. If people want to call me, I'll tell them a bad dad joke. I'm done. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for this opportunity.
Kelvin,
transportation. Listen, we have to increase the time limit for the ferry. Of course, we have to actually tackle the congestion on the North Shore. We have to actually change some of the streets to make them from 2 ways to 1 way. We have to free up the parking spaces on the North Shore, and that's how we actually tackle the congestion on the North Shore when it comes to transportation. When it comes to what else you said, transportation, ferry, and what else? And
superpower.
Superpower. I don't think I have any superpower. I'm just a regular guy. I do less with more. If you look at my life story, I'm very humble. I started with less, with almost bare nothing, but I believe in hard work. I believe in opportunity. And once I'm given those opportunity, I actually make more with less. So if that's a superpower, then that's what it is. But I'm happy to be here. I'm happy for you guys hosting us, and thank you for your time. And thank you to my colleagues.
Thank you. Ranti?
Yeah, transportation is a real big issue. But when we think about transportation, we have to think about infrastructure. Staten Island lacks infrastructure, and infrastructure becomes an impediment for services, for delivery of services. So we have initiatives like the BRT that have been introduced 5 years ago that would actually cut commute times by 40 minutes. That's tremendous because Staten Islanders face some of the largest commute times in the nation, right? And then when we think about infrastructure, some of our community members literally have to walk in the street. They like walking a tight rope in case so they don't get hit by a car. So we need to actually address our infrastructure because it would allow us to actually address transportation. We need more, when we think of Staten Island, it's a borough on water, right? So we need to not only adapt and actually make sure that we have fast ferries, we need to expand our ferry services all throughout the borough to actually maybe have a ferry service that goes directly to Brooklyn. There's a lot of ways that we can actually address transportation. And then we need a thorough bike share program. Staten Island is the only borough without its own thorough bike share program, right? If we want to get people out of their cars, we have to actually give them true alternatives that work, right? So that starts with fixing our infrastructure, our roads, right? So they're no longer an impediment. And then the last thing I'm gonna tell you about the ferry, because this is really important. I was a community school director in the Bronx. And if you were late by 5 seconds at the ferry, that means you were late by an hour at your job. And reverse that, right? Think about parents coming home to have to go pick up their kids or services that they have to get. If they're late, they don't get to those services. So this is really serious, and we need to tackle that. It needs to be an all hands on deck approach. My superpower is two things. My superpower is the ability to get people to see themselves. I have the ability to get people to see themselves in a way that they never did, right? So in my work in education, when I get kids to actually be active and activate, right, in a classroom that they typically haven't, teachers are like, wow, I never knew that they thought this way or could speak. So it's getting kids and their people to see themselves. And my other superpower is compassion. I have the ability to, I'm compassionate, I love people, and I get people to actually love themselves. So those are my superpowers, and that's what that is.
Thank you. And now Amoy Barnes.
So everything that my colleague says are absolutely true. When you go last, it's like, do I repeat everything that everybody just said right now? Like,
to you this time.
You had you go first, but yeah.
Sure, you have a different superpower though.
So, you know, so in terms of transportation, I agree 100% with my colleagues. I have been one of those people who have almost lost my job being late to work. So it's extremely important. I cannot stress that enough, that here on Staten Island, we look at finding alternative forms of transportation. We are not utilizing our waterways the way we should be. There's no reason why we shouldn't have more accessible points of fast ferry service across this island, and specifically across the North Shore, and giving people more access to the waterfront. Bike share. I'm huge on bike share. I'm going to be the city council member that's going to be biking to meetings. People are going to make fun of me probably. Oh, there goes city councilwoman Amoy Barnes rolling up on her bike again. You know, like, I'm a big believer that we have to look at alternative forms of transportation. We are literally, we live on an island. Most of our roads cannot be expanded. So what do? We have to take people out of their cars and make sure they have other forms of transportation, just like everybody else said. So I'm not going to repeat it. What is my superpower? One, I walk really fast. Like, apparently I walk too fast for most people. I'm extremely fast. I don't know. Like, I'm a runner. So in general, as a trackie, you know, like, my mother always said to me, walk with a purpose, right? So as a kid growing up, my mother would be moving and I'm like this little kid that haven't run after my mom. So I just grew up as a kid that just walked really fast, and my mother always said walk with a purpose. And the other thing is, knowledge is useless if you don't share it. I'm a person, and I say this all the time, whatever I know, whoever I have contacts or connections with, they're yours. They're yours. Knowledge is useless unless you share it. And that is the type of person I am in general. If I know something, if I have a connection to something, if I have a contact to something, if I have a network to something, I want people to also have access to that opportunity. I'm about opening up doors for people or helping the other people kick down doors. Because at the end of the day, I didn't get to where I am by myself. Okay? I'll say that all the time. I didn't get here by myself. I got here because so many people lifted me up on their shoulders. So many people gave me opportunities. And I know it's my role and my responsibility to pay that forward. And that's what I do. I pay it forward as much as possible. And one of the other questions was, what would I do differently than Councilwoman Debbie Rose? I just really quick, I think that in general, I think what I will do differently than Councilwoman Debbie Rose is, one of the things I really want to do is have community listening tours across the district where I'm constantly making sure that I'm connecting and listening to constituents and know what's going on and know what's happening. I don't just want to go to the civic meetings, right? Because we know that at the civic meetings, it's always the same people that show up. I want to meet people where they are. That's what I want to do. I want to show up and be in the spaces where the community is and make sure that they know that their elected officials work for them and that they have access to them 24/7.
Thank you. Thank you to our candidates for District 49 for a fun and lively discussion together. Thanks for being part of it. Thanks to our live audience. And thanks to Steve on behalf of Schneps Media Politics NY. I'm Sky, that's Steve with the tie.
Hi.
And good luck
Steve,
to
you
you
look so much
guys.
brighter.
I don't think it really helped, actually, the light.
Brighter? I can't tell.
It didn't really help.
Now I see the circle. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Steve, for this. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Good luck. And
Thank
this
you
was
all.
recorded. Check out our website, subscribe to our newsletter, send us your op-eds, tag us in your social media posts. We're here for you. So thank you so much. Good luck and see you out there.
Talk to all of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.